Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Saturday morning edition of Let's Talk with me, Julie Alli. Some very interesting and serious issues that we are unpacking on the show this morning. Zarina Mutala will be here to talk about the rights of domestic workers. Rashad Tim will also join us a little later on in the show to talk about Rescue 786. But right now, we've just come out of the Mubarak month of Rabi al-Awwal, and we celebrated the birth of the greatest man that walked on earth, our beloved Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The lessons that he left the Muslim Ummah with, one of them being respect for fellow human beings, and very especially respect in relationships. We are also into the 16 days of gender-based violence, activism of no violence against women and children. And as Muslims, we believe it's a very important issue that we need to unpack, bearing in mind the wisdom of our beloved Nabi, which was revealed to him through the Holy Quran by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we also know, and we say shukr alhamdulillah for that, is that for the first time from the beginning of time in history, the greatest man who walked this earth gave guidance to the Jahiliyyah about the equality, the respect, and the love to be afforded to women and children. Now, how amazing is that not? So, in keeping with the traditions of our beloved Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the wisdom that he's left us with, the gift of the Holy Quran directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through our beloved Nabi, we are going to talk about Muslims and the issue around gender-based violence. Sadly, we as Muslims shouldn't be dealing with this issue in our lives, but unfortunately it happens, and it happens all of the time. What is going wrong? What are our religious leaders doing about it? I have no doubt in my mind that these messages are being very, very strongly communicated from our members. But it seems as if it's just not enough. And every year without fail, we are talking GBV. It's time that the talking stopped, and it's time that action is taken. It is time that our brothers, our fathers, and our sons start respecting us, vulnerable mothers, daughters, and sisters. And for the first time on this show, Let's Talk with me, Julie Alli, we team up with Morning Rush, Maulana Dawood, and we're going to unpack gender-based violence. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Lovely to have you here, and obviously you're going to share wisdom with us. You heard my introduction. Our beloved Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam brought light to a very darkened world, and one of the biggest things that he brought to us as humankind is respect. Respect, dignity, and equality for women. And with that in mind, obviously, we look at the issue of GBV. It is rife in our communities. Where are we as Muslims going wrong?
Now, to the viewers, assalamu alaikum again. So I think our growing up, how we were grown up as men, firstly, that plays the biggest problem. You see, the men are taught, well, when you are small, that men do not cry. Men, they have to fight and stand up for themselves. And if you do not raise your hand against a woman, and you will accept everything what a woman does, and they call you a cockle, which Islam is totally against it. I think that's where it starts from first. That from how we grow up, that I am a man, I am everything, and no one can say, and I am the boss. I am the boss of this house. So whatever I say goes. If I say blue, it's blue. Even if it's not blue. I will make you believe that this is blue, so you have to accept it as a woman. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave equalness to men and women. He gave equalness to men and women. So therefore, you see, when you look at also the small baby, when a baby passes away, a stillborn woman, a stillborn baby, so what happens? the decision lies on the mother whether the janazah will take place, not on the father. Because the mother will know whether the child has cried or the child didn't cry at the time of birth. Islam gives the woman a high status. So we have lost it. We have lost it. Rasulullah says in a hadith that Jannah lies under the feet of the mother, which
Absolutely.
means what a stage women are given. What a stage women are given.
Very high status in the family hierarchy is that is, if we're saying Jannah is at the feet of your mother, it indicates how you should be respecting and revering your mother and womankind in general, because your daughters and your sisters are eventually going to become mothers.
Definitely. Alhamdulillah. If you disrespect somebody else's daughter, somebody else will disrespect your sister and your daughter. So Rasulullah in one hadith, he says that the best amongst you is the one who's good to his family. And he says that I, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I am the best to my family. So not Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not only did he not live up, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Quran was the way of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the Quran, there's a command that you cannot even lift up your hand for a man. Imagine now for a woman how much warning Allah gives you. Alhamdulillah, we always as I say that, yes, sometimes women are made to make us angry. They are made.
I don't agree.
No.
I don't agree with that. However, we also know there is a hadith to the point where we are not even supposed to say oof to our mother.
No.
That is how much of respect we need to accord to our mother. And as I've said, our daughters and our sisters will become mothers. So from a very early stage in their lives, both our boy and our girl children, we need to groom them to be respectful to humankind in general.
Yeah.
That being said, and I hear what you're saying, that if we don't, our men, our husbands and our fathers need to be good role models.
Yeah.
But even if that has been lacking, if we've had a situation with an absent father or an absent male figure in the life of a growing boy child, I still don't believe it's an excuse enough for them to grow up to be aggressive and to be abusive.
Yeah.
And, you can still unlearn that bad behavior.
Yeah.
That is what I'm trying to say. Your take?
Now you see, as much as you can learn bad behavior, you can also unlearn good behavior. You can change that.
Both ways.
See, and now because there is dua, faith can change any situation. And as Rasulullah says, ad-du'a mukhul ibadah, that dua is the essence of worship. And dua is a weapon of a believer. Now, if you look at this, alhamdulillah, if you look at this, there's taqdeer, which is mubram, and taqdeer, which is ghayr mubram. Taqdeer, your predestination. Sometimes you had to be a male. No matter what you call changes you go to, you'll always remain as a man. But now, maybe you were supposed to be a bad person because you came from a family. You saw it from your father, that how he was treating your mother, how evil was it to your mother. They say the apple does not fall far from the tree. So the way my father behaved to my mother, and I feel that this is right. That is right. I have to be like that. If I'm not like that, then I'm not a man.
Or I don't know how to be different to women. I don't know how to behave with women because I'm role modeling my father.
Yeah. So I'm saying, with me, I always believe if my wife does not actually sometimes speaks in a harsh manner to me, I always feel that something is wrong with my wife, because she's the one that brings me to the straight path.
Right.
If I am lost, and wallahi, if you look at your woman, they say the woman either makes you or she breaks you. But today, through my wife, I always, I'm thankful to my wife. There was a time I was in Darul Uloom, and I left studies, Islamic studies completely. and I started working. Every time my wife, like she's a pillar of my strength. She would tell me, but no, man, you were made to become a Maulana. Why don't you go back to Darul Uloom? I say, but we are earning, we're making money.
All right.
We are okay.
Let's go for an ad break. We'll be back to talk some more.
Yeah.
Gender-based violence is what we're talking about with Maulana Dawood. And brothers, mothers, sisters, daughters, let's heed this issue around GBV. It is big globally, and we as Muslims should not be guilty of this horrendous offense against defenseless women and children. Saturday morning edition of Let's Talk with me, Julie Alli. Still to come on the show, Zarina Mutala will be joining us. She's from the ANC branch in Indonesia to talk about domestic rights, domestic worker rights. And we'll also be having Rashad Tim to talk about Rescue 786. But right now we're talking about a very horrendous issue. Year after year, this time of year, mainstream media globally talk about gender-based violence, and they do say no to gender-based violence. What's our position as Muslims? Why are we not getting it right? Especially in light of the fact that our beloved Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam brought the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to us, the people, ignorant people at the time. I guess we still are. And the rights of women, we were granted equality way back over 1400 years ago. Despite that fact, there is still gender-based violence against women and defenseless children. Before you respond to my statement there, Alhamdulillah, you sounds like you've got a very supportive wife, that she brings the best out in you.
Yes, true. Sometimes, I am down. When I come home, I'm down. People, sometimes there are so much of problems in my life. As you see me here today, sometimes I handle so much of gender-based violence. People coming to my house. Sometimes people phone me 10 o'clock night, 11 o'clock night. I'm sitting and trying to solve problem. And sometimes if I cannot solve the problem, I always feel I'm useless. I cannot do. And then the wife, she's supportive over me. No, man, don't worry. It will come right. Maybe your answers, you still have to work on them. I mean, she's my supporting pillar.
Absolutely. Alhamdulillah for that. And we need to value our support systems. In your case, it's your wife. In other people's situations, it might be their sisters or their daughters. Yeah. But what type of messages are we giving to Muslim men about respect to women and children? And by the same time, let's also appreciate the fact that when we talk gender-based violence, there's violence being perpetrated against men and boys as well by extremely strong, forceful, controlling women where the violence is being perpetrated on men. So we need to be cognizant of that fact as well.
Now, you see, what I'm saying that if we sit and we analyze whatever is happening in the house, and, we have to, today sometimes gender-based violence goes sometimes, Muslims, okay, I would say Muslims go through this. It could be drinking. Man comes home drunk.
We have alcohol and drug abuse in our community. We can't hide that fact, unfortunately.
Yeah, so when they come home, he's drunk, and the best person to take it off on is his wife. And the person goes to work, and he works for a certain boss. The boss works on his nerves the whole day. He's not strong enough to tell the boss, what you are doing is wrong. And who does he take it out on? Take it out on his wife, take it out on his kids, because he cannot speak to the boss. Mm-hmm. And
so the frustration is being misdirected on the people that
you say you love the most.
Absolutely.
And I always believe, sometimes our women have the notion, the husband, he gives me a beating because he loves me. Now, someone that you love, you will never beat. Someone that you love, you will protect, and you would love. And what I'm saying that we all sometimes go through anger. We become angry. Rasulullah, when once the Sahabas asked, Ya Rasulullah, give us some advice. Rasulullah said, La taghdab, don't become angry. Again he was asked, give us advice. He said, La taghdab, don't become angry. 3 times, because anger is from shaitan. Shaitan is the one who makes you angry.
And also our Rasul also tells us, if you're angry, then drink some water.
Yeah, because
if your anger hasn't disappeared or dissipated, then sit down.
Yeah.
If it still hasn't dissipated, then lie down.
None.
So, there's ways of dealing with anger. But despite all of that, and I know you've outlined earlier on in the show, sabr, taqwa and dua all of the time. Those 3 elements are crucial to our well-being as Muslims. But if all, continue making dua, continue being, making sabr, continue believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to change your situation. But sometimes it is also necessary to go outside of the house to seek help, professional help, counseling, support from Maulanas like yourself. All of those elements play a huge role in changing behavior.
See, I think the most important thing is today we fear that people should know our problem. Yes, we are going through lots of problems. But when I go out there, when I speak to the Imam, maybe the Imam thought of me as being one of the greatest guy. The Imam had, he looked at me as a man that, as an example. So if I go to the Imam, there will be something wrong. And if I go for counseling, I will be weak. So I take myself as weak. So actually...
And you're afraid of being judged because the Imam is now no longer going to respect you because he thought he held you in very high esteem. And because you've exposed your weakness to the Imam, you're afraid he's not going to respect you any longer.
No, I always believe that rather than you go to the Imam, whatever the Imam thinks, he knows that the Imam knows. Rasulullah, the Sahabas used to come to him with many problems. They used to come, and Rasulullah used to keep it as a secret. And Rasulullah never used to change. When you came to Rasulullah with a problem, and he loved you as much as when you left with the problem. And Rasulullah will not expose your problem. The problem is like today, also, we the Imam, our weakness is we discuss our problems. And I always tell my wife...
But you're human as well.
I always tell my wife, listen, with me, the problem that the people are having, I will not discuss that. That is confidential, was between me and them.
Yes.
And we need, wallahi, to make so much of dua for those people who come to you. And Julie, and if I tell you, there were people who came, a man who was in a state of committing suicide because his wife gave him a hard time. It wasn't coming from his side. As you were saying, it doesn't come sometime on one side. It comes on both sides. So this man was going through a hard time. He tried suicide thrice. And every time Allah saved him. Alhamdulillah, eventually like speaking to him, counseling, alhamdulillah, the man has totally changed and the wife has totally changed. They are the happiest people that I ever see now.
Shukr. So again, it comes back to taqwa, it comes back to sabr, and it comes back to dua. And I know this for a fact because on TV we watch all the different khutbahs, etc., and the lectures. We know that the members are preaching and sending out very strong messages about gender-based violence. But do you think that our madaris, whilst our youngsters are at a very tender age, start talking about these issues? These are social issues which maybe children are not getting exposed enough in the home front, but at least the madaris can start playing their role as well.
I think that definitely the madaris are playing their roles. With myself, I go to, I'm in Alex, and this is what I base my life on. How can I speak to youngsters that they can change the way compared to women? And we look at women as commodities. We look at women as something that belongs to me. I have married you, I paid lobola, I paid the mahar, I paid the dowry, you are mine. I can do whatever I want to do. And as I say, it boils down also to my father. My father will tell me, but what kind of a man are you? You let the woman control you. So we have to work.
Sadly, that's very serious, and that is a very often repeated statement in very many households.
Yeah, it's true. Like if I say, you must stand up for yourself. Even if it means you're going to destroy your family life, you stand up. And that's what they tell you. And wallahi, might is always not right. Might is always not right. For you to show the strength is not always right. Sometimes what happens...
Might or anger.
Yeah. And sometimes I have a way, because I know my wife sometimes, she would make me angry. I'm human, she's human. And the best way for me to treat my wife is, when I see she's going on, I will take my car, I'll take a drive. So that I should not say something which I'll regret.
Absolutely.
And I will take a drive. When I come back at home and I see she's still angry, I'll take a longer drive. And eventually, when I come back home the last time...
She's relieved to see you.
Yeah, she tells me, you're such a sissy. You can't even look after yourself. And you can't even stand up for yourself.
No, I think it's more relief. She's relieved that you've actually come home.
Alhamdulillah.
But alhamdulillah, Islamic Care Line is playing a huge role.
No.
And I think more and more families need to access their services.
No.
Don't be shy as a man or a boy or, a boy child to go and access those services because help is available. And if you don't want to go to a secular organization, go to Islamic Care Line. Unfortunately, it seems like we've come to the end of the show. Your closing remarks.
All I'm saying is now, wallahi, and the last comment which I have said already, Rasulullah says the one who's best from you is the one who's best to his family. And I, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, I am the best to my family. And we are commanded that never beat your wife.
Absolutely.
Never beat your wife. Jazakallah.
And that's what we at ITV have to say about no to gender-based violence. Please take this message very seriously. It's a heinous crime, secularly and in Islam. So please start conducting yourself in the manner that would be appreciated by none other than our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, inshallah. Don't go away. Still to come, lots more coming your way on this morning's Let's Talk. Welcome back, and I certainly hope you're going to be taking the issues on GBV to heart and start disseminating the information around gender-based violence. Next on the show, we have Rashad Tim. He's here to talk to us about Rescue 786. These are the people that come to you in an emergency situation, and by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are able to offer assistance, and in very many cases are actually directly responsible for saving lives. Rashad, assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
I am blown away. I must admit, I never heard of Rescue 786, but I'm also very pleased that we have such an organization in our midst, because the one thing that comes to mind when we talk ambulance services is I've heard way too many horror stories about ambulances not reaching the patient on time or just never getting to the call out site, and subsequently the patient then dies. We know that it's in Allah's hands, life and death is in Allah's hands, but you kind of wonder, why did this happen? So who is Rescue 786, and why have you, a corporate, through and through, you've been in corporate for years on end, traveled all over Africa, spent time in large corporates all over Africa, and have decided to move away from that space and now be involved with Rescue 786. It takes a special kind of person to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Julie. Thank you for having us. Yes, Rescue 786 was established as a non-profit organization back in 2010 already. And this was a humanitarian organization established through the help and support and also the coordination from Radio Islam as well as the Jamiat al-Ulama of Transvaal.
MashaAllah.
Back in 2010, the organization started but with one ambulance.
Wow.
However, through the last 9 years, we have evolved, and through the generous contributions and donations from certain patrons in the business community, we have managed to increase our fleet to 5 ambulances within the Johannesburg CBD. Our fleet has been increased to 5. Our staff complement currently sits at 35 staff members, qualified paramedics, call center personnel, administration personnel. And we envisage that part of our transformation program within the next 24 months is to increase this fleet and actually increase our national footprint as well.
MashaAllah. You call yourself Rescue 786, and
Yes.
immediately it leads me to believe that, obviously, and you talk about, you know, the people that started it up was the Jamiat and obviously Radio Islam. So, but that doesn't then say that you're only servicing the Muslim community by and large.
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. Rescue 786 is a humanitarian non-profit organization, and that means we service and we then provide any kind of emergency medical service to any person, irrespective of color, creed, race, or religion. So if you call us, whether you are going to be calling us from a low-income area or from a high-income area, it doesn't make a difference to us. We will service you.
A huge leap for you from the corporate space, a very rigid corporate space, so to speak, into this area of, or this profession or business, call it what you will. How have you managed to kind of settle in? Here, you know, you're talking life and death, because that's really what it is.
Absolutely.
You know, you probably were number crunching, you were busy in terms of your corporate job, people management, and a whole host of other things, business analysis and all of that.
Absolutely.
And here it's about making sure that the staff that report into you are doing their jobs, doing it properly, and actually saving lives.
Yes, absolutely. Julie, you make a good point. After spending 30 years in the corporate environment with various organizations in the telecoms industry and outsource industry, as you mentioned earlier, globetrotting throughout the entire Africa, it's come to a point where at my age, and I'm not too old though, I believe
10 to 51.
I believe, yes, I believe I can take all that what I've learned by managing people, by managing processes, by managing the different finances, and put all that to absolutely good use. And for me, it was reaching a point in my life where there was no better place for me to take all those skills and put it into absolutely good use for the betterment of the community, humanity, and the Ummah at large.
Alhamdulillah. So it's given you purpose. It's given you a sense of purpose.
Absolutely.
So when you came into Rescue 786 some 6 months ago,
yes,
what was the situation like then, and how have you transformed? What have you, with all of your corporate experience, what have you brought to the table, and how efficiently are you running?
So Julie, when I came on board about 6 months ago, it was due to the fact that our ex-GM had reached an age of retirement, and he had to then, you know, take a step back. And I was then approached by the board of directors and asked to come on board and come and assist and obviously take the business forward. What has happened with Rescue 76 in the last few years, although it's been coordinated and largely well supported by Radio Islam and the Jamiat al-Ulama, Rescue 76 has largely become self-sufficient in terms of its doings. So a huge portion or largely our income, as I mentioned, comes from donors and sponsorships. However, we also service patients that are involved in motor vehicle accidents, number one. We also then...
any medical emergency.
Any emergency. If you have medical aid, so if you have a stroke at home or if you have a heart attack, we can come out to your home. We can come and attend to you. If you have a heart attack, drownings. We also do medical event standby. So if you have an event, if you're having a huge show or if you're having a sporting event, you can call us and we can send an ambulance out to stand off for the day in case there's anybody that has a sprained ankle or falls or has any kind of injury. That is very important in terms of the medical fraternity and in terms of medical events, and I'll tell you why. In terms of the Public Health and Safety Act, Act 2 of 2010, it has now become law that if you have any kind of gathering or any kind of event, you must have an emergency services present. What we're finding is that there are so many companies, organizations, and individuals that have events and they may just have some kind of disaster and there's no medical support. They can get into trouble.
Okay.
The JMPD, together with Public Health and Safety, can walk into your sporting event or into your gathering and shut you down.
Absolutely.
So I would say to people that are not aware of this, be aware. You stand the risk of having your event being shut down and all your patrons being sent home. And then in addition to that, Julie, we also do on-site first aid training, level 1, level 2, as well as level 3, basic, intermediate and advanced first aid training. So if it's domestic, if you are just an ordinary person that's at home and you want to know how to do CPR because you have kids, or if you're running a preschool or a crèche and you need to make sure that your staff are equipped and that they are up to par in terms of first aid, we provide you with first aid training.
Wow. So you guys need to come in here at some stage and give us an on-air demonstration of how to administer first aid in all the different situations.
Yes.
Now, Rashad, we talk about Rescue 786 being a private ambulance service. Yes. I also am aware of the fact that there are lots of new upcoming private ambulance companies propping up all over the place.
Absolutely.
But number one, they come at a cost. How will I know that I'm getting a very, very reliable service? Because as I've said at the beginning of the show, that you hear and read about horror stories where the ambulance service just does not pitch, or they come hours late. In the interim, the patient has passed on.
Absolutely, Julie. If you look at the ambulance service at large, besides the city of Johannesburg having their own ambulance service.
And you're lucky if you get through.
There's approximately 100 other private ambulance services in South Africa, nationally.
Okay.
In Johannesburg alone, or rather Gauteng alone, we're looking at nothing under between 35 to 40 ambulance services. The scary part is, Julie, is that up to approximately 50% of these ambulance services are not licensed or registered ambulance services, which means they have not obtained licensing from the HPCSA.
So what are the repercussions to that? So let's assume I call out an ambulance service and one of those unregistered personnel and ambulance comes to my rescue. What could go horribly wrong, and where does that leave me as a patient?
There are a number of things that can go wrong. Number one, Julie, as a patient, you are firstly exposed, and you could possibly be exposed to somebody treating you that is not qualified or registered with the Health Professional Council of South Africa.
And they could do the wrong thing.
They could be doing the wrong thing, which could lead to medical malpractice, etc. If you are then transported in an ambulance to the nearest medical facility, you can also run the risk of being transported in an ambulance that is under-equiped to take care of you, depending on the nature of your injury or the nature of your medical issue. Ambulances that don't have proper ECG machines or proper oxygen, etc. And that could ultimately lead to death if you're not treated in the ambulance properly, and if you are treated by people that are not qualified to actually take care of you in a proper manner. That could also then lead to various other issues in terms of medical malpractice. Rescue 786 is in a fortunate position that we are registered with the Health Professional Council of South Africa. All our paramedics are registered with the Health Professional Council. We are also registered with I2 in terms of medical malpractice. We have our own practice number. And we can also then take care of every single piece of paper in terms of all your administration work. So if you are involved in a MVA, it's very traumatic, as you may know, or even if you're involved in a normal cardiac arrest problem or a stroke, the family are normally so traumatized. Nobody worries about paperwork. Nobody worries about who, what, when, where.
It's the furthest thing from your mind.
It's the furthest thing from your mind.
Okay, let's go for an ad break. We'll continue right after. Rashad Tim is my guest. We're talking about an ambulance service based in Johannesburg. They started out in 2010. They called Rescue 786. It was initiated by the Jamiat and Radio Islam, and they've now become a registered NPO, and amazing work being carried out by them. Lots more to come after the ad break. Serena Mutala will be joining us after this interview to talk about domestic workers' rights. But right now, we're talking ambulance services, Rescue 786 with Rashad Tim. Now, Rashad, obviously the big question is cost. You also spoke about unregistered ambulance services. How do I, as a layperson, distinguish that I'm getting value for money, that people that are attending to me or my loved ones is a genuine registered service and we're going to get absolutely optimal care. I mean, in an emergency situation, I'm not even going to apply my mind to things like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think, from a professional perspective, Julie, first of all, when the ambulance arrives at the scene of any incident, as the patient or as the patient's next of kin, etc., one needs to look at the professionalism in terms of presentation. So look at your ambulance, make sure that it's properly branded, make sure that the ambulance personnel are in proper attire and proper uniform. And at any given time, any of those ambulance staff must be able to produce their registered HPCSA card to you. Just like the traffic authorities, if you need to see the identification card, the same with paramedics. You are allowed to ask them for their credentials. That's obviously number one. Number two is that if you have medical aid, do not be duped into any personnel, the towing services that come on board or the ambulance services asking you for money. If you have got medical aid, all you have to do is give them your name, your surname, your ID number, your address, basically your details, and your medical aid. And as an ambulance service, we take care of everything else for you. If there's anything else we need, a day or 2 or 3 later, we'll contact you through our administration department and get those details. If you are involved in a motor vehicle accident, even if you don't have medical aid, it is covered by the Road Accident Fund. Do not be duped into sideline people saying to you, we can transport you, but we want money from you first.
So that's a big red flag.
It's a big red flag.
So what do you do when you get these unregistered or unscrupulous ambulance operators that come then, they refuse to take your loved one away because they need money or they want money from you, and you say to them, but I'm on medical aid, or the MVA is or will cover this, and they refuse to take the patient? What do you do? Do you have any recourse? Can you take down the details and report them to the health professionals council?
Absolutely, that's exactly the route you go, yes. Remembering that, all private ambulance services, well, not all, some of them that are not registered are not affiliated, but we are all affiliated to an organization called SAPISA, the South African Private Ambulance and Emergency Services Association. So it gets reported to them, and they liaise directly with the HPCSA. They will investigate the matter and obviously come down on these unlicensed and unprofessional, unethical ambulance services. So for Rescue 786, we first attend to the patient. For us, every life counts.
All right, so that's top of your list. Where are you based? How big is your fleet? How do people get in touch with you?
So, Julie, we are based at number 26 Parade Street in Amalgam, just off Church Street in Johannesburg. We have a 24-hour call center. Our number, and maybe the audience should write this down, is 083 9000 786.
As simple as that.
That is our call center number, 083 9000 786.
And your response time, Richard?
So within the CBD area, within a 12-kilometer radius from our base station, we have 5 ambulances deployed at strategic points to ensure that we get to you in the shortest period of time. Within the 12.5-kilometer radius, our response time to the scene of any incident can be anything, traffic permitting, between 4 and 7.5 minutes. However, it is a little bit far and out of that particular radius, again, traffic permitting, it could take slightly longer, but we normally respond within 4 to 7.5 minutes.
Success rate for Rescue 786?
Success rate, I would say our success rate at this point is practically 100%.
Wow.
Operating within our jurisdiction, in our area.
Mm-hmm. What about a patient who doesn't have medical aid, possibly can't afford to pay for the service, called you out anyway? You're going to have to take them to a state facility, one of the state hospitals. What do you do in a situation like that?
This is a very, very good point, Julie. And this comes back to my initial opening. Remember, Rescue 786 is a registered non-profit organization. We are a humanitarian organization. We are here to help people. So in the event of a patient or a person not being able to afford this service, money is not our concern. Our concern is ensuring that the patient gets care and gets transported to the facility. We do, however, charge a very, very low call-out rate of only 750 Rand.
As compared to other ambulance companies? As
compared to other private ambulance services, and other ambulance services could go anything to 4,000 Rand. Ooh. We are the lowest in the industry.
But that doesn't compromise the quality of your care?
Sister Julie, it doesn't compromise the quality, number one, and it also doesn't compromise us segregating whether or not we should be tending to a patient irrespective of color, creed, race, or religion.
Wow.
We often, on a daily basis, get to the scene of an incident and the patient cannot afford the service. We are fortunate and we are in a position where we've received on a monthly basis small contributions from the business community, and we are then able to assist these people that cannot afford the service free of charge.
You do want to make a very important point there as well regarding the free of charge service.
Yes.
And that is the issue around the contributions.
Absolutely.
Why is it important for Muslim people to understand the donations?
So for the Muslim people, it's important to understand that if you cannot afford the service whatsoever, you could possibly be then falling into a zakatable bracket.
And if you're comfortable with that, it's okay.
If you are comfortable, as I've mentioned, we get a number of donors that provide us with a small contribution in terms of zakat. And we'll obviously then fill in a financial assist form for you. And this will then be offset against that zakat fund.
Okay, alhamdulillah for that. May you guys continue servicing our communities. Your 5 ambulances in the greater Johannesburg area.
Yes.
Obviously, the need is way greater than that. What are your future plans in terms of servicing the greater community and possibly going nationally? Do you see that as a possibility?
It's a huge possibility. In fact, upon my entry into this particular field, I've started a transformation plan for the next 24 months to grow the business and obviously then expand to the East Rand, into the communities in the East Rand that cannot afford this kind of service, as well as the West Rand. As soon as that is up and running within the next 24 months, we'll then start on our plan in terms of a national rollout into other areas and into other national grids as well. Yes. Challenges
for Rescue 786?
Challenges for Rescue 786 is obviously we're obviously up against the unsolicited private ambulance services that are around, providing inferior and sub-standard service to the communities. Those are one of the huge challenges. One of the other challenges is obviously operational. As mentioned, we are an NPO and we rely quite a bit on the business and on the communities in terms of sponsorships and donations. So those are our huge challenges. We would like to get more communities and more people and more businesses to support us in this initiative so that we can become a huge national player.
But that doesn't compromise on the professionalism of all of your staff?
Absolutely not.
And the outfitting of your ambulances?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We can't compromise on that. If we want to make sure that we continue holding our license, we are audited on an annual basis in terms of vehicle, staff, our base, in terms of our practices. We have to make sure that we are 100% up to standard. So there's absolutely no compromise in the service or in the providing of any services. Because
you have a fleet of 5 ambulances, and we know that Johannesburg services a huge population of people.
Yes.
There should I imagine times when you're unable to attend to a call out. Do you have a relationship with other ambulance services, reputable ones,
yes,
where you're able to patch through and ask them for assistance and
yes,
vice
absolutely,
versa?
Absolutely. As you know, there are some other large players in the industry that are affiliated to some of the bigger private hospitals, and we do have memorandum of understandings with these private ambulance services, so we can call on them at any time in the event of a huge disaster and us not possibly having enough resources or where we need their assistance at the scene of an accident or at the scene of a domestic issue, etc., etc. So we do have that in place, yes.
In terms of people not having medical aid cover, you go to the site, assist them. What happens if either you or another service takes them to a private hospital, but in the interim the person's having a massive heart attack or some sort of a medical emergency? They could, if not attended to immediately, they could die in the interim.
Yes.
What happens in a scenario like that? So you take them to a private facility, they're not on medical aid, they're not going to get admitted.
Correct.
And you, maybe the person, the medical personnel misunderstood the ambulance service people and took them to a private facility rather than to a state hospital.
Yes. That can happen.
And I'm sure it does happen a lot.
That can happen. That is why we always ensure that, on the onset of the call coming into our call center, we try and obtain as much information as possible. So we have trained call center agents to go through a series of questions with the next of kin or somebody that's on scene, or even the patient for that matter, to try and make sure that we obtain as much information about the patient's medical history, as well as regarding the patient's medical status in terms of whether the patient is a private patient or a medical aid patient. And that will then immediately be able to tell us if the patient needs to go to a private facility or to a government facility.
Do you guys have good working relationships with private clinics, the emergency services and the government hospitals? Because I've been told that if you have a medical emergency, it's better to be transported via ambulance, because you're going to be attended to at the hospital ASAP, rather than being taken there by a family or friend in a regular car.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Remembering that when an ambulance arrives at any emergency facility, whether it's government or private, the ambulance goes directly to the casualty emergency exit. The patient is always on a stretcher, being attended to in terms of the injury or in terms of the problem. And you then wheel directly into the casualty area. What happens is that while our ambulance is en route to that medical facility, irrespective of it being private or a government, we already call the medical facility and alert them. Rescue 786 is on his way with a patient. The patient is P1, P2, or P3 in terms of the severity of the patient. Be prepared, ETA 10 minutes. Personnel is then waiting, and they know they're ready to receive us the minute
Very
we
much
get
like
there.
we see in the movies.
Very much similar.
We've come to the end of the
Very
interview.
similar.
What do you want to leave our viewers with?
Don't forget our number. That's number one. Rescue 786 is here. We are here to support you. We are here to render service. Our phone numbers 083 9000 786, and call us anytime you need us.
What about volunteers? Lots of young people are wanting to give back into the community.
Yes.
They want to pay it forward. If they approached you to come and work on weekends or holidays as volunteers, would you give them the necessary training and take them on board?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We currently have 12 volunteers on board.
Okay.
These are people that have just currently completed and studied for their basic ambulance assistant courses, and now they need to serve their internships.
Right.
So they need to do 1,000 hours of community work first. Serving and working on an ambulance. At that point, we'll then do an assessment as to see whether or not they can actually then work independently on an ambulance. We will then give them a certificate of appreciation, sign them off, and if we do then have vacancies, we will then even offer them permanent employment.
And have no doubt in my mind, there's a lot of jobs available in the sector.
There's a huge number of jobs available in the sector. There's a need for practitioners. As you know, the entire medical fraternity, the medical industry needs doctors, needs nurses. So there's a huge opportunity here for youngsters coming out of school, wanting to go into the active medical industry, working on an ambulance, be part of the action, go and study, learn, serve on an ambulance, and you can definitely move forward.
In closing, young people wanting to consider this as a career choice, where do they go to study, and how much time do they put into the studies? To become an ambulance assistant now, the ugly thing is that when people see an ambulance, they say, there goes the ambulance drivers. When is the ambulance driver come? These people have studied. You study through colleges, you study through universities. There are different levels. You first become a basic ambulance assistant or basic life support practitioner. From there, after studying for that, which can take you up to 2 years, you then become what you call an ILS, an intermediate life support practitioner. Once you've completed that, you then become an advanced life support practitioner. Those are the guys that drive around in all those rapid response vehicles that are normally first responders on scene. That can take you up to 3 years through a university or technical college. So it's not an easy task. It's a serious matter. You almost becoming a doctor. Because you need to know everything from vitals to how to deal with somebody that's displaced in terms of limbs, etc., etc. So you can study through various colleges, various technicons in South Africa.
It's your choice. One has to go onto the various websites, register, and then of course you can start.
It's a special calling, isn't it?
It's a special calling. It's a special calling. You must want to help people,
Absolutely.
and that's what we all do at Rescue 76.
Alhamdulillah.
We want to help people. We help people.
Jazakallah for sharing with us. Amazing work you guys doing. Keep it up, and may you grow from strength to strength. And it is so heartening to know that you guys are out there. I really feel safe. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah for being with us. That was Rashad Tim sharing such valuable information with us. This is stuff I didn't know. And I hope you are now suitably informed, that you know if there's an emergency in your home, in your community, these are the guys to call, inshallah. So that's it then from this part of the interview. We will be joined by Zarina Mutala in a few minutes to talk about the rights of domestic workers. Welcome back, the final segment of the show this Saturday morning, and now we're going to be talking to Zarina Mutala. She comes from a very, very strong activist background, not only she, but very many of her family members as well. She works for the City of Johannesburg, and today we're spotlighting the issue on domestic workers. Some people prefer to be called house helpers, home executives. Call them what you will, but they're a very integral part of our lives. Do we treat them fairly? What are the terms and conditions that govern this sector of the workforce? Zarina, assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Walaikum salam, and thank you for having me.
Great to have you here. Been wanting to pin you down for a long, long time. Finally have you here. Before we even talk about the issue around domestic workers' rights, you've been, and many of your family members, very active in the struggle, and subsequently have been serving in government positions, obviously locally. So I know you're working at the City of Johannesburg. Tell us, what's your role?
I'm a PR councillor, proportional representative in the City of Johannesburg and for the African National Congress. And my work is where you get deployed to a constituency, and in my case, it's the Lenasia Innervale constituency. And I'm deployed there to assist with service delivery.
That's a huge issue. I think we should leave it for another discussion.
I agree with you.
But that is a very, very huge issue, whether you're living in the suburbs or whether you're living in townships. How do you deal with all of that anger and frustration of the people?
You know, Julie, I've learned over the years, I've worked from 1995 in the ANC Parliamentary Constituency Office based in Lenasia, also responsible for a huge region, which we call Region G. And I think geographically, and our region's in the very deep south. Lots of challenges, the high rate of unemployment, inequality, lack of service delivery. So it's been a struggling region over a while. And I think working in the political office, at the time with the late Amit Kathrada, the late Isuchiba,
who's just had his book launched recently.
Just had a fabulous
book
launch on Sunday. Absolutely.
Thank you for the invite. Sorry I couldn't make it.
No, that's fine. You actually missed out on an awesome event. And we had members of parliament like Ismail Vadi, Dr. Ram Soluji was at the Gauteng legislature. And these members were deployed to the Lenasia constituency. And with that, you also have people like Councillor Prema Naidu, that was, of course, the first councillors in 1995, and served until 2016.
Wow.
So I was really surrounded by activists in their own rights, who
and
I can't
amazing
even compare.
Mentors.
All of them. Auntie Rihanna Adam was also a local councillor. Rihanna Musaji was in council as well. And they were all activists in their own rights, way before me. So I was really surrounded by a fantastic team of men and women that mentored me, and I could say almost groomed me.
That's amazing. You are here, it's a job, but you're actually servicing the communities, you're servicing the taxpayers, you're having to look after their best interests. At the same time, you also have to see that the city, the services are running smoothly or being provided as per the expectations of the taxpayers. it's a really big, it's a huge task, and people do vent their frustrations on people like yourself, people in government. Difficult to deal with, is it not? Very challenging.
It is, and I think from the onset, you're actually right, because people know you and you're right in the coalface of a community.
And they expect you to perform miracles.
They expect that. It's always the issue of no water, no electricity, there's potholes, the grass isn't cut. When you walk out of your home, you want to see a clean environment. And I must say, in the past 5 years, things have not been the way they should have been.
Why?
This new administration that came in with the coalition after the local government election in 2016,
right.
saw the DA with coalition with other parties.
Of course.
And prior to that was the ANC administration, and other parties were, the DA was the official opposition. After 2016, it saw the ANC as an official opposition. But it's just not because we're in opposition that we are saying things went wrong. I'm not saying in the previous administration the ANC did not make mistakes or had any shortcomings, nothing of the sort. But you didn't see a lack of service delivery the way you are seeing it now, whether you come from the township or whether you come from the suburbs. Okay, if you just look at the CBD, you just look at the region we come from, in Region G. Lack of service delivery, short of resources.
But Zarina, I'm wondering, people like yourselves, and when you guys get together for your indabas and meetings and forward planning, etc., and I know you're the PR counsellor, so you do play a huge role there. What is it that you guys are uncovering? Because it's very distressing for the taxpayer. It's distressing driving through the CBD, let alone the townships. The lack of service delivery. There's rubbish all over the show. Beautiful buildings, historical buildings are busy degrading. And the list goes on and on and on. And I have no doubt in my mind that you really tired of hearing this all the time. It's being rehashed, and even if you're at a social function, you're cornered and you are made to answer. You are called to account. Are we going to be seeing a change? Why is this happening? And I'm sorry to be putting you on the spot, but is this due to corruption and possibly tenderpreneurship? And all of those type of nefarious relationships?
Look, I think it's a multiple of things. And first you must remember, at local government, if you don't get your basics right and you don't spend your budget, you don't spend your grant that comes from National Treasury or from your national departments, you are going to be facing the kind of situations we are.
Why are the guys not spending the money? Do they think that they hold on to the money? It's going to suggest that they're saving the city some money?
You can't save. When it comes to services, you're not supposed to be saving.
Yes,
what you're supposed to be doing is to use your money wisely and properly. And just remember the function of local government, okay, is to maintain what you have, okay?
Or upgrade, if you have excess.
Or upgrade where you are, and also to do new projects and new developments throughout the city. So that's really a function of local government. You have a budget, there's entities in the city of Johannesburg, they are also run by boards. But if you fail on your basics, communities are going to rise and they're going to be angry. And I think on the flip side, what we've seen now in the past 5 years, the level of community activism has risen.
Absolutely.
And that is absolutely fantastic, because you need to hold us to account, irrespective of who the administration is. But of course, if it's a governing party, you've got to ask the right questions. You've got to know what was your budget, where was the money spent. I mean, we had an issue in Indonesia with the sports department saying we spent 4.2 million on a soccer field. And we went and we said, but where?
Yeah.
And I know we personally just had to follow this through and call it something what you call a social audit. Okay, you say you're spending the money, sports people are on the ground, communities are on the ground, they're looking at their facilities and they're saying, but if you spend that much, we don't see a change.
Absolutely.
So you've got to ask the right questions. And it's very pleasing to know that communities need to start taking charge.
There is absolutely, as you suggest, an uprise in community uprising, mass actions, mass protests, etc. But with it comes a lot of destruction of infrastructure as well. How can we still mobilize communities to get what they want without destroying property and infrastructure? It's a tough one, but I think we need to be very circumspect in this situation.
Yeah. I think when it comes to local government, your ward councillor represents you in the city. Okay, it's not that you represent the city at your community. So you got to, as a ward councillor, you got to be continuously in touch with the community, give feedback, hold your meetings, inform them of what's going on. As long as you have that way of feedback when there's an issue, I think it will reduce the kind of destruction that we are seeing. There should be no destruction. Because nobody minds a protest, Julie. You can do that, but you don't have to destroy property.
And at the end of the day, it's really costing you and I as taxpayers extra money to then rebuild or to reinstall whatever has been damaged. But let's go for an ad break. We'll be back and talk about the matter at heart, and that is obviously domestic workers'
Okay, well,
rights.
lovely. We'll wait for that. Yeah.
Serena Mutala's here. I couldn't resist talking about obviously local government issues that we've been faced as citizens, and I just thought that would give us a very nice background to what we're going to uncover right after the ad break. Serena Mutala is my guest. She is the PR counsellor at the City of Johannesburg. We had a bit of background as to the state of the city, and now we're going to move on to something that we can't do without, and that is domestic help, their rights and recourse to their issues. A huge issue. How come you're at the coalface of domestic workers' rights? You're the PR counsellor, but you are playing a very special role in the space, are you not?
I am. I think my previous background, I spoke earlier, when I was employed at the Parliamentary Constituency Office, we had a labour desk. And the need for the labour desk was that domestic workers and general workers that felt very vulnerable used to approach our office.
Wow.
And there was always the issue of unfair labour practices, people not getting time off work, overwork, underpaid, your general issues.
Yes, yes.
And that's why I was establishing a desk at the constituency office. And then years after that came the sectoral determination with the Department of Labour, where you had to register your domestic workers for unemployment fund. And there were other basic conditions that had to happen, your hours of work, a set remuneration, what you can deduct and what you can't deduct for. So at that stage, I was still also at the office. And just pleased to say that I think I registered approximately 3,500 people for unemployment.
Wow.
It was your employer that had to register your employee for domestic workers. But rightly said, it's a sector that we cannot do without.
But also it's not being policed or managed because, who goes out to check that domestic workers are being fairly treated? The only time that the issue comes to light is when the person has had enough, has felt totally exploited, then they take their case either to the Labour Department or to the CCMA. And then we hop, skip and jump just to try and right the wrongs we have perpetrated.
Okay, how I actually got involved now, just about 2 weeks ago on a Wednesday. I was approached maybe about a month ago by Eastway Domestic Worker Alliance, and later found out that some of the workers...
But they're not very active. I'm not sure that they're actually representing the worker.
No, Eastway I think is. They have offices in Johannesburg, and having spoken to them, I think they have quite a good base. They have an office. People are welcome to go to them. I think who is not really doing the service that they should be is the Domestic Workers Union and the Department of Labour.
Okay.
So how I come in now, totally different from my work as a councillor in the city of Johannesburg. But as a community activist, I would not turn anybody away. I think it's not right. Domestic workers are a very vulnerable sector.
And a vital role in our lives.
Absolutely. And there has to be a very harmonious and good working relation between the domestic worker and the employee. extremely important. They spend a lot of time in our homes. So actually, I don't know how I actually got to this, but about a month ago, I was called by Izwe and we had a meeting. We met with them. We met with some of the domestic workers and we had a public meeting. Sad to say, from the employee sector, there were only 3 people that came. We had about 35 domestic workers. Okay, they came out on a Wednesday evening and they came to listen to what Izwe had to say, what we had to say, and what the CCMA had to say about their rights.
What are the main issues? What are their rights? And in terms of the employer suggesting that I can't afford my domestic worker, it's crippling me financially. If I come to an arrangement with my domestic worker, call them what you will, a house executive, domestic worker, a helper, I'm not quite sure which terminology they're comfortable to sit with. But you have that, a lot of that has popped up in the press recently, is that we're going to put a lot of people out of work by paying the suggested minimum wage to the domestic worker because people can't afford it. It's just totally unaffordable. But if I come to an arrangement with my domestic worker and say, I can afford to pay you X amount, and if she's agreeable, can that agreement be cast in stone? Or would it still be seen as if I'm exploiting her?
You know, compliance is extremely important. And it's a service that a lot of people do need and can't do without. You have to comply. There's a separate wage for a 45-hour week and there's a separate wage for the 27-hour week. Now, because somebody is desperate for work and you think you're increasing unemployment, doesn't give you the right to get away without paying the minimum wage. Remember the minimum wage of 15 Rand for a general worker? You've got to pay that.
Per day, 8 hours?
No, a general worker could work for you for 5 hours, but you've got to pay them 15 Rand per hour.
Right.
Now, you ask yourself, would you, for 15 Rand an hour, do the washing, do the ironing, clean the house, clean the windows? We all know what goes into home, keeping a home clean, keeping a home tidy. You have children at home. Sometimes they even see to people at home that are disabled or unable to move. So they have a lot of chores that people ask them to do. So when you're employing a domestic worker or a helper, just be very mindful that you've got to have a contract. If you do not have a contract with your worker, that is the first point where you're going to find you're having problems and they're complaining. A contract is between 2 people. If it's a live-in domestic worker, you still only got to work that 45 hours a week. Saturdays after 1 o'clock is overtime and it's time and a half. Sundays the same. Now, we are a very spoiled constituency. We're always having visitors and you're having functions. But I don't think that domestic worker would mind. But it doesn't have to be the norm. To work weekends, it's got to be an exception.
Right.
Right.
And an arrangement between yourself.
You've got to
either pay for working or you give her time off in lieu of the work.
Yeah.
What about people who take, and a lot of this is now happening due to possibly affordability, and people don't want to come foul of the law. And a lot of people are now opting for a casual worker. So you come in once or twice a week and that seems to suit both parties. Or in a specific area, there's one domestic worker that services 5 different houses, meaning she goes to a different house every day. How does that pan out?
Well, that actually plans out fine. And these are basically for your domestic workers that don't live in and they're casual, so they can work for 2 or 3 homes, not a problem. But you cannot say you're working there and you're earning that, so you're getting enough money, I can shortchange you. Everyone's got to abide by the minimum wage of 15 Rand per hour, okay? And remember, the casual workers are traveling. So if you give 15 Rand an hour, look at the transport money they use to come and to go home.
Yeah.
Okay, we get in our cars, most of us, you go somewhere, you're not hampered by transport. Then there's bad weather conditions. Some of them come 10 minutes late and they're getting wrapped on the knuckles. Mm-hmm. So where is the humanity we feel for another human being?
Absolutely. As
Where
Muslims,
is the empathy?
As Muslims as
Muslims
well.
and everybody.
You know, I mean, the point is that we've been taught by our beloved Nabi that we need to treat even our servants fairly. So, you know, we need to question why we don't follow through on that command. But be that as it may, does the 15 Rand an hour stand for full-time employee, for someone that works for you from Monday to Saturday, the entire month, or is that a different wage calculation?
No, that's a different wage calculation, because your sectoral determination, okay, is what determines your 45-hour a week or your 27-hour.
Right.
So if you feel the 45-hour for a live-in or a sleep-in or a sleep-out helper is too much and you can't afford it, I think right now it's almost 3,000 Rand a month.
Yes.
Okay? Then you offer the 27-hour.
Right.
But pay the wage.
Absolutely.
Just know they also have the needs we have.
Absolutely. We've got 3 minutes to wrap up. What are the other important issues we need to know in terms of annual leave, sick leave, someone getting injured on the job? Is that my responsibility?
Someone getting injured on the job is probably going to be a law being discussed at the moment. I don't know when it's going to be promulgated and when it will be gazetted. So you're looking at workmen's compensation, like other factories and shop workers. There is your annual leave, there's your sick leave, there's family responsibility leave. They're also human, they need to go to places. So all that is important, but I think it's too short a time to talk about that extensively. What I do want to say is, when you are talking to your worker, do not refer to your worker as a maid.
They
From
find
the
it very
Indian
offensive.
constituency in particular, I would say, do not use derogatory Indian terms to refer to your domestic worker or your helper. By now they know. It's, it may be historic, but when you find the younger people, and remember the children learn from us.
Absolutely.
You cannot treat people bad and call them by bad names.
Absolutely.
It is totally, totally unacceptable.
All right, Zarina, we don't have time to cover everything, but is there a website we can go to just to check that we're on track, that we've registered our helper via the UIF, and that they adequately covered, and so are we?
Okay, you can just Google domestic workers sectoral determination. It gives you every single thing of the 45 hours spoke about. There's certain areas that pay a certain wage. There's the area A, there's the area B, how to register, how to go about unemployment. Your sick leave is in there, your annual leave is in there. That website is extremely informative. Extremely informative.
Just very quickly, how much annual leave is the helper allowed?
Depending on
Would
how
it be
many
21
years,
days?
it will be your 21 days.
Okay,
yeah,
exactly like corporate.
Days. It's almost like corporate.
Right.
But again, have an arrangement with your worker. Sometimes they need to go to a funeral. I find they're telling me that they're not getting time off to go to a funeral. They've got to wash the dishes first. Now they've got to travel somewhere. I think it's just about how we have to treat one another. And I want that to come through and to show that you have that humanity, you have that empathy for your workers, irrespective of if it's your domestic worker at your home or if it's a guy doing your garden services. I think workers generally just need to be treated well. They will then give you more than 100%.
Absolutely, they'd appreciate it. They become part of our family, don't they?
Absolutely.
In closing, you mentioned an organization that's doing very good work with domestic workers. If nobody is able to take away the bulk of what we've been talking about here, can they access that organization? What is the name of that organization, and what sort of supporting information will they get from the organization?
Okay, they call the Israel Domestic Worker Alliance. I'll actually send you their contact details. Maybe it'll be good to have them on the show.
Right.
Amy and Florence are the people I've interacted with. I've also spoken to Thomas from the CCMA, but would like for the Department of Labour to play a huge role. And I think Easeway is doing very good by workers. You don't even pay a fee, but you can go to them and they will get in touch with the employee. If they find that they can't handle your case and it's too complicated, they will refer you to Labour or to CCMA. But I found them to be useful.
What is the gap with the Labour Department? Why is it that people don't seem to get resolution when they go to the Labour Department?
Look, I think the resolution for general workers in companies who are registered and comply is okay, but from the domestic worker sector, that's where I think they're not getting the kind of support because they don't have regional offices set up.
Okay. That's where we have to leave it. Important discussion. Maybe
Yes.
we can revisit sometime in the new year, inshallah.
Absolutely,
And cover a
Ami.
whole host of other things as
Yes,
well.
that would be
Jazakallah
wonderful.
so much for coming in.
No,
I
absolutely.
thoroughly
Thanks for
enjoyed
having
that.
me.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
There you have it. Zarina Mutala, PR Councillor at the City of Johannesburg, talking to us about, firstly, a background on the ANC, her role and her mentors, and alhamdulillah thereafter, the importance of domestic workers' rights. We will revisit this in the new year when we're all going to be scurrying around looking for help, because in a lot of instances our domestic workers either don't come back or they have emergencies or issues of their own, and they've decided to end the relationship with us. So we all, mid-January, I know there's going to be a lot of scurrying around looking for good domestic workers. So let's wait for them. In the meantime, thank you indeed for your company. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the interviews this morning. As always, take care on the roads. Until the next time, it is Assalamu alaikum and Khuda Hafiz from me, Julie Alli.